let's talk a little bit about where we've been and where we're going. We've been on this journey from these 4 spiritual practices, right? Remember, release, reimagine, and restore. And tonight we're going to dig in a little bit around the practice of reimagine. But before we get too far, I wanted to ask you, were there things that you connected with or that came out of your engagement with the remember and release practices that were really interesting or life-giving, or that rubbed you the wrong way?
I think last, was it Sunday that we did the last one?
I think so. 2 Sundays ago.
Yeah. It was interesting for me because the story that we looked at was the guy that comes to Jesus and
says, yes, what do I have to do?
Right. And
sell all your possessions and get the money
yes.
for.
And it's interesting because I have heard that story since I was a little kid. And it's almost like I had locked into this meaning of what it was that I couldn't break away from, or didn't realize I wasn't breaking away from. So it was just interesting, the discussion and just all the things that people were noticing. Mm-hmm. And so on, and it made me look at it in a different way. Mm-hmm. So that was really helpful.
I would say that when I was looking at going through the journal, I realized that giving to the church and giving to good causes was something I think my parents did, but my father never talked about it. But I know that it happened, and so there was no parameter for me when I was growing up about what was we talked about tithing back in the 50s and 60s. But there wasn't really anything that I inherited from my family about the way of giving A, to the church, and B, giving to good causes. I know it happened because when I saw my mother's checkbook, then I would see those kind of things. But there was no conversation about that in our house.
Mine is very similar to yours. One of the exercises in the first week was about, Mary, we're just sharing just briefly, was there something in the first 2 practices that stuck with you or rubbed you the wrong way? A thing that I'm curious about, there was this question about when you were writing your money story about like, who are your financial role models? Like, I never saw the checkbook. My mom managed the money, but it was all like her thing. And I don't think there was an intentional value around secrecy, but I think there was a value around we're not going to burden the kids by talking about money. And I think I shared in a sermon, like it turned out she was doing totally the opposite of what I thought she was doing. But there's no one I would have to sit really long and hard and think about who do I know enough about their financial practices to even call them a role model. Mm-hmm. That feels kind of sad. Mm-hmm. Somebody else?
Well, I wasn't here for the remember one, but for the one last week, again, the same one Joe's referring to, there was that story of if you want to, I can't remember exactly what the if statements were from Jesus. If you want to be good, or if you want to be, I can't remember what the first one was. The last was perfect. The second was perfect. Mm-hmm. And I actually never read that as like kind of like an if-then statement and kind of like a gradation of like, this will get you this will get you this. And if you want to give up all your possessions and all the other stuff that you've been doing correctly, then you're perfect, and then follow me. And I kind of had, so it was in that moment kind of like seeing that difference, but also then this giving up all your possessions or giving up your possessions. And what does that really mean? I mean, is it everything, or is it just everything you don't really truly need? Or is it just, or am I parsing it completely because I'm anxious about that? Mm-hmm. Because I feel like at least I need the things I need. Mm-hmm. Anyway, that was kind of an interesting kind of resistance that I felt I was having to that moment.
Does Jesus need you to give up the measuring cups and the turkey baster?
Yes.
You're just going to have to buy them again next year.
Yes, exactly. Right. Well, that's true. What does need mean? Right. So, yeah. So.
There's a poem if you have your journal, great. If you don't, I'll read it out loud and it'll still be fine. on page 27, if you want to read along with me, and we'll use it as our opening prayer. So, God be with you.
And also
with you.
I used to think that love was simple. You would know when you know what was meant would be. But I fell in love, and it's not that easy. It's compromise and identity, mountains and valleys, apologies and memories, imbalance, recentering. It turns out, love took reimagining. I used to think that church was simple. Church was community, not the walls, faith and hope mixed with call. But then the world grew violently sick, and the way to be church was to keep distance. So doors were closed, the people sent home. It was all love by another way, and yet it was not how we imagined Sunday. I used to think that justice was simple, that I could make a difference all by myself. There was a clear right and wrong, a way I could help. But then I learned of privilege and bias, of white savior complex and our church's silence, and all at once it wasn't so easy. I needed to learn, I needed to listen, I needed to reframe my original vision. I guess what I'm trying to say is, life will throw first drafts our way. The chance to dream, to lead, to sing, to love and give, to pray and be. But in order to grow, to follow God's lead, we have to do the work, reimagining. And despite our best efforts, love will fail, churches will close, justice will leave the vulnerable exposed. And when that happens, we must own our part, say we're sorry, and try to restart. So write it all down, and write it again, a first draft, a second, an epilogue, and then share it with me and we will pray. And the Spirit will move, and maybe one day we can write this world inside Heaven's gate. For I am starting to believe that what matters in life will never be easy. So we must imagine and imagine again. We must dream and try, die and rise, and in our rising may we see the next right reimagined thing, until step by step we are home. Love by another way. Amen. I think I'm passing the torch to Dale now that the alarm has gone off and it's time to relock the door.
Okay, so for the next 5 minutes or so, if you've got your journal, if you've already been writing in it, but if not, you can use this white sheet. What we're going to have you do is fill out the two columns. What drives our current economy? How would you describe it? What drives the economy of the kingdom of God? And what does Jesus give us a glimpse of? Just fill those two out. Take about 5 minutes on your own to fill that out. And we will come back together in a short amount of time and start talking about this. All right, so for our economy, let's look on this side. What are some of the things that drive our economy?
consumption.
Yeah.
Greed.
Greed,
Money.
money,
Is it consumption and immediate gratification?
immediate gratification.
Desire.
Nice. Handwriting's not great, but yeah.
Well, just consumer spending on needs.
Competition.
Competition.
Needs or on everything?
Just whatever you need to buy.
Anxiety.
Anxiety.
It's like, I feel like I learned at some point that the marketing industry is oftentimes based on creating an anxiety and then selling you the thing to meet that anxiety.
I jotted false need.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
False need.
Mhm.
I like that too. That kind of does it pretty good.
The measurement of success is how much you have.
Possessions equal success.
Whoa.
Boy, I'm not very good at
Well,
it.
I was messing with it. I was trying to make it more stable. This thing is designed to make the presenter feel uncomfortable.
Give you
It
anxiety.
works.
That's right.
Yeah, there we go.
Possessions equals
Success.
success.
I don't know what the word is, but the marketing of things is now defines our quantities for us. So I'm thinking, for example, when I was growing up, you bought sliced meat from the butcher who was in the grocery store, and you got the number of slices you wanted, and it was wrapped in paper, and now you have to buy a prepackaged container, which is the container itself is
Plastic and you have to throw it away.
plastic and heavy. And
Probably has a lot more in it than you really wanted.
And somebody else is defining the quantities.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, you throw away the container, you throw away the stuff that you don't use.
So it's
What-
loss of control of
Who determines what?
pretty early quantity.
But also the sort of throwaway culture.
Waste is a good word.
Waste. And put, I think
That's
new
waste that
and
we have no
new,
control
new is
over.
better.
Yeah.
And
New is
disposable.
better.
In the short view, there's no long view
Yeah.
of consequences. It's just the
Immediate
well,
gratification.
Immediate gratification, but just in the larger sense of global crisis and what the long-term effects are of this kind of a thing.
Right.
Efficiency is valued.
Yeah. And status.
That waste makes me think, so there's the person making the container that gets the share of that money and the one that makes the meat. I mean, it's the waste that helps drive.
Right, that
Yeah.
drives the
More.
economy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, the cost of the product winds up, the cost to you winds up including the packaging and the marketing and the shipping.
And there's kind of an assumption of waste, and so it's a part of the cost of what you're buying is also the cost of getting rid of it.
And it's just all encompassing. I mean, you used to buy, you bought a roll of stamps.
Right.
Yeah.
You bought a roll of stamps and you licked each one.
Mhm.
Now,
Yep.
now you buy the sheet and there's 2 pieces of paper
Right.
and there's glue and you tear up the stamp.
Some of this, I think, has to do with the goods are now national and international instead of local. You have to work hard to find. You have to go out of your way to find something that was grown, created, and sold to you locally, as opposed to something that went to a giant distribution
So
center.
it's
That's
global,
right.
not
So it's
local.
globalization.
Yes, yeah, globalization.
And the environment is something to be used, not cared for.
Extractive.
Can I use extractive? And
Yes.
whoever said that,
Yeah.
that was great. Okay. How gosh, you guys have a really good list here. I haven't done this either, so I was doing this alongside you guys. So I kind of have. I'm just going to throw a couple of mine out just because I wonder whether this is maybe I'm going down the wrong road. But taxes and tax avoidance.
Yes, yes, yeah.
And tax avoidance is about kind of keeping things away from government who can help people. So it's kind of, there's a certain amount of clenching of this money to people, but tax and tax avoidance.
And alongside that, the notion of government as a sort of commonwealth of resources that gets distributed in terms of social safety net and social security and, shared responsibility for the cost of paving the roads and the public schools.
Government role there, I hope.
Yeah. I had a couple of positive things on this side, and please don't run me out on a rail. I think there's something in our economy about risk that I feel like I don't really understand, but there's all this speculation. There's the stock market feels to me like just socially acceptable gambling. And there's something about the risk it takes to open a business, large or small, and the risk it takes to invest dollars and to desire the success of that business, and then you might lose, right? And I was thought also about, I grew up in a family that my dad had a company job and my mom had a company job, and the notion of running a small business just does not compute to me. It's terrifying. Why would you ever expose yourself to that kind of risk? And a friend of mine did it about 15 years ago. She quit her solid company job and opened a small local grocery. And I was like, what is wrong? But those are the places I want to shop.
Yeah.
There must be people who want to take those risks. And that's all a big company is that same desire to do a beautiful thing and invest in it and be willing to lose it at scale.
Yeah. Which kind of is like one of the things I had put down for myself was supply and demand.
Oh, yeah.
Because you have to understand the market, you have to the risk, and what it all comes back to for me, as I started thinking about it more, is like this side of our economy is based on scarcity, and so it's distribution of scarce resources,
And perceived.
or perceived,
perceived
exactly,
scarcity.
exactly. So I'm just going to put in scarcity, and I know you guys will know what I mean there.
Can
so.
you also put debt?
Go,
That's-
Lord.
Okay.
The positive word I thought of is innovation and invention.
Yeah.
That, this style of economy tends to drive
And reward.
new ideas. Yeah,
Sometimes.
You said innovation and what was the other word?
invention.
Invention.
Same.
Wow.
You know, there's one other aspect, and I don't know if this is positive or negative, but the word I would use is philanthropy.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
you know, people amass wealth and then, you know, you go to a fundraiser and money is put back into services that, you know, people need, the arts. So there's a whole nother philanthropic economy that happens around that.
Right, and some of that too, it is kind of based on this tax avoidance piece, but not all of it.
But no.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
some of it is actually really just, good people caring for each other, caring about things. So it's kind of interesting how they also start working together.
It's like gratitude is in there,
Mm-hmm.
because so some of it tax avoidance, but some of it's gratitude for what they
Yeah.
have, and so, yeah.
That'll make its way over to the other column.
Yeah, speaking of.
Wait, I got
Oh,
one
you-
more.
you have one more, sorry.
I think collective joy needs to go in that economy.
Collective
Every time I
joy.
hear that it costs like $500 to get a Taylor Swift ticket, I'm like, why on earth would you spend that much money? It's
Oh,
because
for
people
collective joy.
have been there, and it was
such a good time.
it was such a great time. They were willing to invest in it, and I feel the same way about the Vikings. Like, why would you do that? But people, this is why there's joy. It's collective joy, and maybe also tribalism, but whatever.
Well, and it also gets into experiences also,
Yes,
which,
yeah.
and what I've been hearing is that a lot of younger folks today who are of, adult age, but still, they're looking more for experiences rather than possessions.
Yeah.
And so that kind of speaks to that, joy that you get
Yeah.
from going to a concert or taking a trip or, getting somewhere else to climb a mountain or whatever. So,
But the experiences thing turns out to create huge problems for Venice and, I mean,
Yes.
Yeah.
Iceland.
And Nepal.
Pretty soon the experience is experiencing other people having an experience, not
Mhm.
experiencing what you thought you were going for.
Yeah, and that Iceland thing is an example of things like I think we've done the wrong thing by making ourselves so popular and available and interesting because they're having a really a quality of life crisis there. So
Well, so it's like the environment taking,
It's to be used, not cared for.
It's extractive again.
extractive.
Yeah.
Wow. Do you want to move to God or we want to keep talking about this stuff?
Yeah.
This can go the way it needs to go. This is fine.
Well, as we got more positive, I could imagine those were the ones that
Well, let's get a few over on this side. Anybody?
well, I think, God's economy does involve money.
So money. Okay.
And I think that's kind of,
Say more about that, Jojo.
well, I think that's just where the commonality is. This is a lot about money, and it's, whether it's positive or negative, it's, the resources are necessary and so on. And the church is no different in that we need resources. We need monetary resources to build the church. That's not the only thing we use to build the church, and I'm sure we'll hear a lot of other things that are a part of God's economy. But yeah.
Was some common medium of exchange.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there used to be a lot more barter or exchange of things. I mean, it was much more informal, and somehow, and that, so the God's economy, I would say, has a broader definition of mediums of exchange, whereas our economy really pretty much comes down to money. Not entirely, but to a huge extent.
Well, like the early church, it was all about sharing and community.
Yeah, you kind of like the needs were met by, your needs were met by your community or by God.
Generosity,
Yes.
say, community, communal sense.
I want to believe that in God's economy, people and creatures and the environment have inherent value, as opposed to what I think is implicit here, which is that you
The
are valued either on your merit or your bank account or what you can produce.
Yep.
So there's something about like living in such a way that that we aren't just extracting from the earth and from the farmers and from the knowledge workers, that we are inviting people to share their gifts in a way that honors everyone and keeps us in some kind of balance. Can you get all that in one word?
So the measurement of success, I don't know how to say what it is. It's
Yeah.
not money.
Right.
It could be community or happiness or
Collective thriving.
Fulfillment.
I put down for you, or kind of what I'm hearing, honoring community's gifts.
So some of you heard me say, what was the series of things we had last spring? And anyway, I won't go there. I came across about a year ago meditations with indigenous elders. And so it's a daily meditation that's based on conversations with indigenous elders. And one of the things that really strikes me from that is, in my centering prayer practice, we did daily practice and end up with the Lord's Prayer. And the thing I'm beginning to just feel really intensely is the Lord's Prayer has no acknowledgement of the earth. And all of every single day, somehow in this little meditation, there's a bigger little way in which the earth is acknowledged, and Christianity really ignores the earth. It's just, maybe I'm wrong, but it sure feels
We
like
could have a whole series on that.
Well, and it's not like Jesus and his followers in that time didn't need to get their
right.
life from the earth.
Right.
They were no different in that way. Yeah.
Well, and that brings up for me, translations of the Bible and Scripture. Because I think, I wonder if you go back to original texts, if there actually is more. If you went back to Hebrew and Aramaic, because those cultures, maybe like you're saying, they were so tied to the earth in a way we are too, but we sometimes forget.
Right.
A good example.
We buy hamburger and it's like we're separated from the cow, and from the farm where it was raised and so on. And so I just wonder if, and I had been reading something about sin and how the original translation wasn't so much about something that you were punished for as it was something you made amends for and that you missed the mark. It wasn't so much you did something evil, although you could have, but it's just, it can encompass so much more that you missed the mark on something. And through a lot of the translations have kind of tainted that relationship,
Well, it's
So
like the
it's-
poem that you read. It's the first draft, second draft. We don't get it the first time. It's
No.
you miss the mark you tried to.
Mhm.
One word I'd like to add to the God's economy is forgiveness. The Hebrew Bible practice of Jubilee was, I think scholars would argue about whether they actually ever practiced this, but it was the notion that every 7 years or every such and such a generation, all of the debt that you might have accrued relative to your land and your personal family was forgiven, and the land was returned to whoever the original family was that had it, so that if families were winding up closer and closer and closer to destitute, there was a reset button. There was this moment where your financial sins were forgiven. You were released. And so I that's a connection I would make to, like, in our DNA stream as a religion, there's this notion as part of Jubilee that you let the land lie fallow, that you let the land heal and restore itself too.
And that's the long view too, as opposed to the short view.
Yes.
It's like indigenous people looked at the 7 generations,
Mhm.
Yeah.
which is a very community-minded way of looking at all the resources.
It connects you to all of your ancestors and all of the people who are yet to come.
There's something very powerful about the 7 years too, because if you think, I remember my parents, I remember my parents remembering their parents, I know my children, but when you start counting, the seven generations is where you no longer have any
Memory.
memory of
Yeah.
it, even through somebody else that you have. But I'm also struck by the notion of gleaning.
Yes.
And right.
Do you want to say more about that?
Well, gleaning is when you harvest, you purposely leave. I mean, it's not just that you sort of forget to, or you don't have the energy or whatever. You purposely leave a certain portion for other people to come and glean. And it was usually on the margins of a field, so that it was easy to get to.
A word that came to mind is equity, and it sort of speaks a little bit to what you're talking about. That, and I think of God's economy as aspirational, but where unconditionally everyone has the opportunity to participate, to be enriched, and whether that's the community garden at the edge of the field, whatever that is.
Everybody has an opportunity. That just sparked something, and I hope you don't mind me to put it out there, because it's it can be on both sides, but not in the same way. On this side, we have billionaires who collect and hold and grow bigger and get power, and it's all about bringing it in. And they've got a massive amount of riches, but they're not necessarily sharing it. On this side, God is infinitely rich, and He gives freely to us. And so it's kind of like we've got this. We're so over here, we forget that we've got this richness coming to us, and it's not just, it's in anything. It's in
So is
spirit
it
and money.
hoarding and sharing? Or?
Hoarding and sharing, maybe. Yeah, hoarding maybe over here, sharing, and kind of just everything is provided for. Life is trust. Is that what you said? Yeah.
It's kind of like God is a spiritual billionaire who shares.
Yeah, and there's no reason to hoard it. There's no reason, of those
There's
kinds of
enough.
goods, there's enough.
Yeah.
One
And
thing's
the notion
abundance.
of what's enough?
Yeah.
I mean,
Mm-hmm.
there's never enough on the left side.
Right.
And, it's not hard to feel like you have enough. On the other side, I was thinking the things that could go back and forth are the ingenuity and creativity.
Mm-hmm.
And what else did we have there? Ingenuity and creativity.
Innovation.
You think about the early church, and they certainly were ingenious and creative and flexible, and
And they took risks.
Took risks.
Every time
yeah.
they went into a new community, it was a
Yeah.
risk.
Life and death.
What else would kind of be, which two might be, or which combinations might actually go together and not be in opposition?
Well, this doesn't answer that question exactly, but one other thing I was thinking about is wealth builds wealth. So you get to be a billionaire because money makes more money, right? But it's what's the word? Can't think of it. But it's the same on the right side.
It's additive.
Yeah, exponential, whatever phrase you want to think about it.
So that's kind of on both sides. You're
But
saying.
I see that same thing happening on the right side, that idea of abundance and sharing.
Abundance, yeah.
And, you know, once you kind of get that flywheel going, that grows and builds and spreads.
Abundance is.
And it's not abundance for the few,
Right.
it's abundance for the community.
Yeah, and the reasons, right, and all the things attached to both
Yeah.
of those are different, but there is a common link between those.
Yeah, that's true. And there's also kind of like, especially on God's economy side, not so much over here. So I feel like we all know this one really well. I have a harder time kind of getting my head around this one, but it's good to do it. But also it's like, it's not, I mean, we're having our money story, but it's everything else. It's kindness, it's generosity, it's spirit, it's love, it's all that kind of stuff. Relationship. All of the gifts that we're given.
One of the things I think could go on both is time. Because we have to give our time to make the monetary kind of, I mean, that's how we're paid. But I think, you know, looking at it from the church standpoint, I give my time, but the payment isn't something quite as tangible. The payment is increased faith. The payment is joy. The payment is community, and so on. Even someone, you know, everyone has a different level of involvement at church, and you might have, you know, someone that shows up twice a year, but they're still giving up their time and they're still adding to the community, which benefits all of us, and so on.
You know, I was just thinking about the story of the people wanting to sit at the head of the table, and they might be asked in the back, but if you sit at the back, you know, and so part of our economy has to do with prestige, and God's economy is really focused on humility,
Yes.
ideally. So different. I was just looking at, and I'm being flip here, but I don't like the people on the left side.
But
I
it's
want to
us.
be,
It's
well,
us.
it is,
Right?
yeah,
Me.
I want to be with the people on the right side. Yeah, yes, relative to others, that's no doubt about it.
Well, but one of the things that often strikes me is in conversations about consumption, at least in my experience, is so many conversations center on what the people who have more than I have should be doing differently, right? Not
what I
not
should
what
be
I
doing.
should be
It's
doing.
their fault.
But then, so wherever you are in the economic ladder, I think there's a sort of leaning toward the idea that the people above me are the ones that should be changing their practices, not me, right?
It's like the
Wherever I
woman who
am.
gave away her last coin, as opposed to somebody who just gave a portion of what.
Yeah, from the abundance.
Yeah.
And Ruth Ann, you brought that up at the last one, which I thought was really interesting because, and I think a lot of us, at least in our small group, kind of came to the realization that we were not the rich and we were not the poor, you know, and then the question came up of, well, where's our place in this? You know, that, you know, we're saying there's always someone who has more than us and there's someone who has less than us. And so I thought that was interesting.
Where do our responsibilities go? Up, down? I think it depends on who you are, too. So, in this
Good
economy.
question to be asking right now,
Yeah.
in the middle of stewardship.
Right. I'm kind of getting past pine time, so.
And are we ready to turn to the next piece of our evening? Does it feel like we covered what we wanted to cover?
I think so. This has been more than, I didn't know how this is going to turn out. So thank you all for being so engaged. But so if you guys have
Let's take
more
a
to talk about, go ahead. If not, we'll just move on to the next section.
Okay. Well, maybe we'll come back to this after we read a little scripture together. If you haven't had a chance to like dig into the booklet, I just want to say the stuff in here is really rich, and we haven't been able to cover all of it in any way for the first two practices, and we won't be trying to this week either. But the text that Rosemary just mentioned about the widow with her 2 copper coins is on the flip side, which you have to turn the wrong way when you flip it, of your blue paper. And if you want, you can turn in your booklet, if you can juggle this many pieces of paper at the same time. There's a piece of artwork that goes with this on page 29. So I'll read this text, and I'm going to ask you to just listen for one word or phrase that stands out to you. And then I'll ask somebody else to read it a second time. It's from the Gospel according to Mark. As Jesus taught, he said, "Beware of the scribes, who like to walk around in long robes and to be greeted with respect in the marketplaces and to have the best seats in the synagogues and places of honor at banquets. They devour widows' houses and for the sake of appearance say long prayers. They will receive the greater condemnation." He sat down opposite the treasury and watched the crowd putting money into the treasury. Many rich people put in large sums. A poor widow came and put in 2 small copper coins, which are worth a penny. Then he called his disciples and said to them, "Truly I tell you, this poor widow has put in more than all those who are contributing to the treasury, for all of them have contributed out of their abundance. But she, out of her poverty, has put in everything she had, all she had to live on." Is there one word or phrase that stands out to you?
Devour.
Yeah, I would agree. That's what I was.
Abundance.
Poverty. All she had to live on.
Appearance.
Places of honor.
Would somebody else like to read it the second time?
Sure.
As we listen the second time, I'd like to ask you to listen for something you wonder about.
You're in godly play right now. As Jesus taught, he said, "Beware of the scribes who like to walk around in long robes and to be greeted with respect in the marketplaces and to have the best seats in the synagogues and the places of honor at banquets. They devour widows' houses and for the sake of appearance say long prayers. They will receive the greater condemnation. He sat down opposite the treasury and watched the crowd putting money into the treasury. Many rich people put in large sums. A poor widow came and put in 2 small copper coins, which are worth a penny. Then he called his disciples and said to them, "Truly I tell you, this poor widow has put in more than all those who contributed to the treasury. For all of them have contributed out of their abundance, but she, out of her poverty, has put in everything she had, all she had to live on."
What do you wonder about this text?
I wonder where all that money in the treasury is going.
I wonder what compelled the widow to do that and what's going to happen to her next.
And I wonder what the widow thought when she knew what she put in, but she knew that other people were putting in a lot more, but had a lot more left over. I wonder what she thought about that.
Well, I think the challenge for me is I'm neither the poor widow nor the wealthy scribe, right? I mean, that's probably true for all of us. We're somewhere in the middle, so.
I was struck that he was teaching, and then he sat down, and then he called just his disciples and said to them this last few sentences. Because we think about what can we do in the face of injustice, and he's just telling his disciples, and maybe he knew that was enough, that this message would go out past them.
I'm wondering why she felt she had to give everything she had. Kind of related to what some other people have said, but it's it's great that you can give a lot, but someone who has nothing, I'm just wondering why she felt she had to become more destitute.
Maybe she believed that 2 copper coins was going to help someone. I'm wondering if that's what she thought. Not
What-
herself,
Rosemary, would you
obviously.
Talk a little.
I'm sorry. I'm wondering if she thought that those 2 copper coins were going to help somebody else, not herself, and that's why she did that.
And she was willing to sacrifice that.
I'm
And that's
wondering
what
about-
was-
sorry.
Sorry, no, I was just gonna say that's kind of what was missing.
Yeah.
From the people who are giving a lot, they're giving a lot of money, which is great, but they're not necessarily sacrificing. Sorry.
I was just wondering about her faith and trust that
Mhm.
she could give that up and
Mhm.
felt she was going to be taken care of.
I'm reminded, we had a member at St. James who had, I'm sure, very little. She lived in a tiny, tiny, tiny little house. And every week, she would turn in her envelope with 2 $1 bills in it. And every week, she put on the outside of the envelope, use it where it's most needed.
Yeah.
And on the one hand, as a counter, I would read that and it's $2, right?
Yeah.
And it felt, I never quite knew what to do. I never quite knew what to do with that in my own heart.
Well, that's a good moment. If you have your booklet, turn with me to page 30. There's a reflection here I want to read and then we can talk about it. And I have to apologize in advance a little bit. I feel like the reflection suffers from some unnecessary quoting and academic ease. But we're going to read it and maybe somebody can summarize it in their own words before we get too deep past it. This is from the artist. In this painting, I have depicted 2 coins from the time of Jesus. 2. 2 is not enough to live on. Economist Thomas Piketty's new book, Capital and Ideology, details how societies throughout the ages have structured inequality into their and our economic systems. He argues that the economy is not a force of nature. Human ideology shapes the economy. Marshall Steinbaum sums up Piketty's new work. In his sweeping new history, the economist systematically demolishes the conceit that extreme inequality is our destiny rather than our choice. In this text, Jesus agrees with Piketty. An exegesis of this text by Addison Wright establishes that Jesus is actually lamenting the widow's gift. Let me just read that again. One reading of this text by a guy named Addison Wright establishes that Jesus is actually lamenting the widow's gift. He cites Jesus' overall viewpoint on the financial structures of the day, arguing that this cannot be an affirmation of the widow's selflessness. Rather, it must be a lament of the societal structures that cause the widow to give all of her resources to organized religion. For me, the lament perspective on this traditional stewardship text is transformational. It is inspiring me to engage financially with the church in a much more personal way, With sudden clarity, I connected the fact that Jesus' church is the financial ideology I believe in. The hypocrisy that Jesus observes in this text is the same hypocrisy that I have always struggled with as a member of the church of the present. So, what actions can I take? What questions can I ask? And what conversations can I have to ensure that the church I am giving to is the church Jesus meant to create? I feel like she needed an editor. But I wonder if she's making a bold point, and I wonder if there's somebody who'd be willing to take a stab at, like, can you restate this in plain English?
Well, it makes me think of indulgences. It makes me think that maybe she feels the pressure. This is how she is a good Christian, is by putting all her money in there. That it's a little guilt, it's a little intimidation. And if this is, I'm struck by the phrase organized religion. Give all her resources to organized religion. This isn't to the poor.
Right.
Who knows where this money's going?
Right.
Probably not going to the poor.
That's the question you raised.
Yeah.
Or it's money instead of time and engagement. And it's like, I don't want to spend the time, I'll just write a check.
Yes.
Well, I'm thinking of two churches that I know in Minneapolis. One who sold a building, I've described this before, one that sold a building 3 or 4 years ago and gave $250,000 that they made in selling their building to the Indian Land Tenure Organization. And another church that sold a building and is very public about the fact that they are going to spend, they know that they can't continue to exist, but by selling their building, they figure they have 6 more years and they'll spend it down as a church. And there's no guarantee that the church is using our money well, right?
I'm wondering, somebody said, the word that came to me was obligation. This woman maybe somehow feels an obligation to give all of her wealth. And then it goes back to last week's perfection. She literally gave everything away. And is that really what, I think that was what we were struggling
Is
with
that what
last
Jesus
week. Is
is
that really
asking?
what Jesus wants us to do, to live with
Right.
in sackcloth? I don't know. But there's some message here, and boy, is that a twist,
It's a twist.
right? From what I was thinking when we first read this.
What
And
if instead of Jesus saying, oh, she's a hero,
right?
Yeah.
what if Jesus is saying, look at these people who are willing to take her last $2?
It's the organized part.
And she feels she has to. I mean,
Right.
And she- maybe she
there's a
feels-
societal or an organizational imperative that makes her feel like she has to. And so I wonder what she thought of.
I just was, I've been reading this book by Sharon Says So. Who's the Sharon Says So lady? She does history and civics on social media. Anyway, the point is, there is a story she tells about this woman named Virginia Randolph, who was a black teacher in the county I grew up in the Reconstruction and Jim Crow era. And she taught in segregated schools. As a black woman, she was teaching black kids. And she put every single dollar that she ever earned back into buying more land for more schools for those kids. She used that money and she raised money and she did all these things to build a community. And then once she had bought the land, she deeded it back to the county so that the county would take responsibility for it and have more schools for black kids. Absolutely heroic, right? And the writer of this book makes a point, like, what a hero this woman is, and how criminal that the county was like, thank you so much for your contribution. Thank you so much for your contribution. Yeah.
And it's Virginia, so what did the county do? Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Well, and I can just, I mean, there's people in this very room who have experienced not having an employer that is willing to actually pay for supplies for kids,
Mm-hmm.
that means that
Oh, gee.
a couple of these people in this room at least have had to go out and spend their own money, and it becomes just the norm.
Right.
It becomes what's expected. Thank you for doing that. And aren't we just thrilled that you've done this? Thank
Yeah.
you so much for doing it. When it's like, this just sucks
Yeah.
that you're having to do this, and it's an obligation that you almost kind of like take on as like, this is just part of like the vocation, and it's just wrong.
Well, it's beautiful, but also it's wrong.
But it's wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There, go ahead.
Well, I was going back to the poem and making me think of this organized religion. I used to think the church was simple, was community and not walls, and I feel like the organized part of that, when there's people that maybe take power, or I mean, it becomes something different. And that's what I was thinking of. The way she says organized made me think it was corrupted somehow.
And we see that, not here, but we see that in these mega churches.
So
Very.
there's some. Did I cut you off too
No.
soon? There's a couple of discussion questions on the right-hand side of the sheet. If you look at the middle one, it says, "Look closely at the text. What behaviors or systems or intentions does Jesus condemn? And where do you see those behaviors and systems and intentions at play in our modern world and in your own life?"
Well, it says right here that he saw the hypocrisy of the system
Mm-hmm.
that claimed to be there for the people, but we're taking the money from the people who could barely afford to give it. So, yes, we do know that still happens.
Something in that system compelled that
Him to
woman
do that.
give
Yeah.
everything.
There was an implication somewhere.
Pressure
Mhm.
of what's acceptable,
Yeah.
what makes you equal, what makes you part of the community. And if you don't give the money,
Mm-hmm.
then you may be excluded.
I think it's important that she's a woman
Mm-hmm.
and not a man.
You want to say more about that?
When I was 16, I spent some time in Italy as an exchange student, and we would go to the old church. Gorgeous, of course, everybody gave their blood to build this church in this little town. And it was filled with older women praying and giving their money. And just the belief in the priest, and this is, still going on, in the goodness and the power of the priest, made them give their money.
Mhm.
And I'm not sure they're in family I was staying with, it's clear the husband didn't know quite how much was being given. But I just think it's really interesting. It wouldn't be a man in this story, I don't think.
It's also a widow.
Yeah.
Yes,
widow.
so someone
Right.
who
Who was
has
less
no
than,
power,
less than.
no longer had financial support.
She didn't have status either.
After a reference to devouring widows'
Mm-hmm.
houses. Yeah.
Yep.
I feel like that's a pretty clear condemnation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to put you in the poorhouse to make sure you tithe.
Well, and it also kind of speaks to weaponizing kindness or people's kindness. That's just what you're expected to do, or like the example of a teacher where it becomes the norm then, because we won't do this because we know you're going to step in and you're going to do this and so on. So,
Because he speaks from experience.
yeah, absolutely.
Whenever Jesus is railing against the people who like to walk around in long robes and be greeted with respect in the marketplaces, I always feel intensely uncomfortable. Maybe we should get rid of all the robes in church and the reverend in front of the clergy names. And Jesus was really clear: call nobody father, right?
Yeah.
Okay, you can call me mother, I suppose, but whatever.
Maybe that's why Adam is not having us wear robes. I'll ask him that.
Do you wear it when you go grocery shopping?
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. There's an implicit critique of people who are more interested in status and recognition than they are in service. And I feel like when I catch my breath in those texts, I try to remember there are plenty of places where people where the rabbi at the synagogue might have been wearing robes and greeted with respect, but it was because he had earned that, right? It was because he was building enough trust in relationship with people. And how we use power in ways to not accidentally devour somebody's house feels pretty important.
Mm-hmm.
So, we volunteer at school, and there are times it comes up in conversation, and sometimes I feel like we're bragging, but in cases like that, I think it's more like we can talk about it, and somebody else looking for something to do will think, oh, I mean, I feel like you're sort of putting some good out in the world.
Yeah.
And it's not bad for people to know that you're a female priest.
Right.
And it's not all bragging or.
Right.
It feels like some of this is intention then. I mean, if you've been given this status and there's a way to use that status in the right and good use of it, but it's almost like you have kind of purposely, in some of these descriptions in here, converted that to your own needs or to your own power, to your own ends. And you can't really know from this whether he actually means literally everyone or not. I can't believe he does, but it's like, just beware of them. Some of these people do this probably because you can't tell from just looking at them if they've actually converted the power and the prestige they have,
Right.
which is used for good, into something that's self-aggrandizing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of that's just kind of all, I think, the tension that's always in everything. It's like you don't know these people, you don't know what people are
Right.
in their head.
Well, so this last question on the right-hand side is, I find exciting and challenging. If we could rewrite this story from Jesus in such a way that it paints an image of the kingdom of God instead of an image of extraction and taking advantage of people, how would we rewrite the story? If Jesus was stepping back and saying, wow, isn't this beautiful? We've really gotten it right. What would he be pointing at?
Like loaves and fishes,
Yeah, okay, say more.
completely different.
Yeah.
I mean, people at first complained, and particularly the disciples, we don't have enough, are you crazy?
Mhm.
And then, people kept finding, this is how I interpret the story. People kept finding little bits of food to put in the basket. So it was full and overflowing by the end.
Maybe I contribute my 2 packs of raisins, but I get back some of your banana bread and
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
cheese loaf.
Everybody's got something.
That's great. What else? How else could you rewrite the story? What would it look like if the widow was able to give something meaningful and have her needs met
And still have her house.
and still have her house?
Really worried about her being homeless.
Well, maybe when she went to put her 2 coins, the person who was there receiving the money said to her, can you use this for yourself and your family? So thank you for your gift, for the intention of your gift. Maybe you want to take care of yourself this time.
Mm-hmm.
What would Jesus say? And there wouldn't be a lot of people walking around in long robes, writing lots of wonderful stuff.
So this idea of this treasury being up there and you're watching
Yeah.
people put stuff
Put
in.
in.
There's something about that encourages that kind of behavior.
Yes.
It's
that
like
pressure.
I watched a food show the other day, and there's a place in Vermont that there's a farm, and they do bread products and desserts, and they put them in a little building, and it's on your honor system. They don't expect, they don't say what it's worth. They don't recommend an amount of money. It's just what you can give, and everybody is content with that. Because people who can give more will give more.
Yeah, and I've heard of something like this. Actually, they do this in northern Wisconsin. There's a place outside of Washburn or Mayfield. It's a dairy, and they have this. They make this incredible ice cream, and they have a place where you at the top of the hill where you can just go and buy this. It's honor system. You put in what you want. And I know somebody from that dairy, and they said we actually make so much more money from people giving more than we actually would have charged.
Yeah.
She said, I know there's some people who just can take it, but maybe they just need it. But there's other people who give $5 for a 50-cent, ice cream cone or something like that. So, I mean, that actually kind of warms my heart. And it's like, this is great. And it benefits them for sure, but it also, there's something about allowing that to just be honor on the honor system and have your expectations exceeded.
Yeah.
It's really nice.
In this story that I was reading, it's that there's like a cute little owl or a house or something, and it's nobody sees what you put in.
Yeah.
Nobody knows.
Yeah, nobody knows.
In my last job, I was running this program for the diocese where we were essentially selling courses and asking people to take those courses. And when I got there, I said, well, how should I be pricing these things? And it said, the person I was working with said, well, it costs us about $300 a person, so let's charge $300 a person. And I said, okay, what about the people who can't afford it? He was like, well, we'll have this scholarship fund, and people, write up an application, and then we'll cover the cost. Great. We did that for a couple of years. And at some point, we decided to change the approach. We decided to say, we would like you to pay what works for you for this course. It costs the diocese about $300 a person. So give what you can, and if you're able to give more to make this work for other people, that will mean we can continue to offer programs like this in the future. And we had more income and more people registered, and the whole energy was different because instead of implying you have to be worth this much money in order to participate, and if not, you have to apologize for it.
And ask.
Mm-hmm.
It was, there's no barrier to entry, and can you be generous in response? It shifted the whole dynamic.
That's kind of the marriage encounter model too. You go to a weekend, it's in a hotel, meals are provided, it clearly costs a few $100s per couple.
Yeah.
And it's free.
Yeah.
And at the end of the weekend, they don't tell you how much it costs, but if you think a little bit, you can figure it out.
Yeah.
And they ask you to contribute toward somebody else's future weekend, and it works.
It's like Ruth Ann's story about the envelope at St. James.
Yeah.
Use it where it's needed, and it was $2. But that $2 was important to that woman to give, and that was what she could give.
Several of us in those conversations will use the word relationship. And all of this is about money. And I think if you rewrite the story,
It's about the relationship.
we need to give as much attention to the idea of relationship as we do to money. Because when we go back to that list, I think what's largely missing on the left side is that sense of relationship.
And
That's
it's
what-
there, and it's there all over the place on the
On
other
the right
side.
side, yeah. It is. That's true.
Something Becky said just made me wonder, or just realize how much there is that we don't know about this story. And just in these Bible stories in general, because we're so far removed from the time and the culture, and we just naturally put our own understanding in it. But this idea of, I had never really thought of this as everybody watching people putting the money in. And so this widow could have been then feeling the pressure to do it because she was watching and so on. And it makes me think about today how over the past, I don't know what it's been since most people haven't put a collection envelope in the plate.
Right.
That I mean, even that was still somewhat secret because no one could see how much was in that envelope, but there was still the ritual of seeing everybody put something in. And now that's kind of been taken away, which I don't think is a bad thing necessarily. So
But it does make you feel like you feel bad when you don't put something in because you're so used to it. Even though everybody understands, everybody knows, and probably pledging online, all that kind of stuff. But the plate's still
Moving
untouched
around.
by you. So so it's kind of like good but
Well,
uncomfortable. And
yeah, and I remember as a child that we had little envelopes, and I was very proud to put my quarter or whatever it was in there. And my mother that was one of the times my mother would remind me, because I had my own little box of envelopes, and they had their own box of envelopes, and everything went in the plate. There was no online
Right.
back in the
Right.
50s.
There was no mailing in the check.
No, and it was almost always cash. So I remember that, and it was closed, and you didn't, it had your numbers, so the bookkeeper knew, but for the kids, they didn't count. It wasn't counted, but for the adults, it was.
There are congregations, we've learned this in the stewardship team, there are congregations that in the back of the pew, in the little rack, that keep a stack of laminated cards that say something like, I gave online this week, or I pledged. And so when the plate comes by, you just grab one of those laminated cards and put it, so you still have the sort of sacramentality and the rite of it, but you get the ease of the ACH or whatever it is, the direct deposit. It's something I'll be curious to talk more about after we get through the stewardship season, because we have lost the ritual of it, and there are parts of the ritual that are really good, and parts of it that might feel kind of like manipulative,
Right.
coercive.
Yeah.
And how do we thread that needle? I don't know.
I can feel both sides of this. by the
Yeah.
way. I can feel both sides of this. Yeah.
Last Sunday, I decided that I was done feeling bad when I didn't put anything in. So I decided from now on, I'm going to put something in, even if it's just $1.
Well,
Maybe it'll be $2.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, but I mean, I want to. I want to contribute in that way. It's in addition to my pledge, but I just decided I'm going to do it, and I already feel better about it.
Well, I know there are families, I remember in the past, who always put a $5 bill in the plate. Now, they were pledging thousands of dollars, right? But every Sunday, they would put a $5 bill, and I've always admired that, but I never turned around and did it myself,
Yeah,
right?
I'm just
I
gonna do it.
think that's a,
But I think by losing the optics of everybody put something in the
Yeah.
plate,
right,
we've lost an educational component.
Yeah.
yeah.
And our observation after running the pledge drive last year was attendance is way up, number of pledges is flat.
Right.
But on the other hand, people are still putting money in there, and I feel like that says something about, it would be very easy to say, well, nobody knows if I'm pledging or not. I don't have to put anything in there, but they are. So.
But I'm just sitting there thinking, I admire that. At the same time, if I put a $5 bill in there, somebody going to think, oh, is that really all she gives?
So yes, it's like, who's watching? Here's the crowd putting money in the
Yeah.
treasury.
I have two thoughts. I'm just thinking of my own experience. I think when the bishop was here, we said, and we don't do that very often, but today's plate
Those two.
will go to, and I pulled out my wallet because I knew, oh, this is something special and unique, and it's not my pledge. But there's all kinds of things that we could be maybe doing that would do that. Can I just share one? There was a research study that I happened to be a part of with the University of Minnesota, and they were trying to figure out when people give online, and this would be in any fundraiser, because so much fundraising, right, is now done through email. And the question was, are you doing it anonymously or do you want to be recognized?
Yes.
Oh,
And what they found was, and this is all, large numbers, right? So very statistically relevant. When people knew that others could see them giving, the amount of giving went up substantially.
Interesting.
And there was even, this one just stuck in my brain because I thought it was so interesting. When you go to a checkout and they say, do you want to round up for such and such?
That's
Get
Stewart
this.
Co-op. Yeah.
Get this, they did a study and they put a coffee mug with a set of eyes on the coffee mug on where people were checking out. And the checkouts with the mug with the eyes had statistically significantly more people giving. It was like this subconscious.
Social
Like
pressure.
watching the
They
crowd.
just thought somebody's seeing that I'm giving and I want to round up. There is something about
Yeah.
and then I kind of struggle with that a little bit too. Is it because I want recognition? Because I don't, but yet I'm part of a community. And if we're all giving, there's a momentum that you're building.
Yeah.
And so there is some positive to having that shared experience of giving that makes that gratitude, right, even greater because I, felt like I did something. So there's something there
Yeah.
that we could be thinking about.
Interesting.
Well, Emma, we're about to close, and I just want to. The theme this week is reimagine, right? We spent time looking at and naming some real realities of our economy, and then trying to see how God's economy might reimagine some of those features, right? We took a text that many of us were familiar with. Many of us have an interpretation that we've been wrestling with for some decades, and kind of turned it upside down. What if Jesus is bemoaning the fact that she did this, or that she was pressured to do this, or that they accepted it? Like, that's a big reimagine right there. And just now we're reimagining how we communicate implicitly in our worship about what our shared gifts do, and how, who participates, and how do we make that not coercive, joyful, celebratory. We didn't come up with a lot of answers, but we've spent some energy building that muscle for reimagining. There's so much more in the booklet on this theme, and the time that you have for it in the next week or so will be enough. The time you have will be enough.
All right. Okay, so this is the closing up portion. Take a minute, quietly reflect and write down what's the one thing that you're taking away from tonight. And if there's anything that you'd like to share as far as what you would like, one thing you'd like to ask a prayer for tonight, please feel free to share that now.
I'd like to ask your prayers for Bobby Kaufman. She's a 98-year-old member of our congregation who hasn't been able to come to church with her body for a long time, but she is now in the hospital with shingles.
Oh.
And she,
Who is this, Susan?
Bobby Kaufman.
With shingles.
Yeah. So keep her in your prayers. She receives Eucharistic visitation regularly, and her memory is is a big challenge. But she remembers Larry, and she remembers St. Luke's Episcopal Church. So,
And her daughter is Nancy Mark, and I am friendly. We are friendly with Nancy and Steve. Prayers today for Sydney Foster, who's having surgery tomorrow for her cancer, and for Sheila.
Mm-hmm.
Say there was a flash on my phone that it looks like there was some agreement for a first phase of peace deal between Israel and Hamas. And I pray that that is true.
Would somebody like to lead a prayer?
I did the first one, so I'm off the hook.
Someone not saying Susan. I will lead it. Lord, thank you for bringing these wonderful people together, for allowing us to talk about topics that can sometimes feel vulnerable or triggering or frustrating or angering or joyful, and letting us share those things together. I pray for Bobby Kaufman and relief from her shingles, for Sydney Foster, and for Sheila, for that family, for her surgery tomorrow, and Thanksgiving, if it's true that Israel and Hamas are going to be coming to an agreement, and I pray that we all leave here with hope, leave here with confidence that things will be well, and for appreciation for every single person who gives me hope that all things will be well. In your name we pray.
Amen.
Okay, so again, Susan already mentioned, if you're thinking about something this week, anything you think about, any of these conversations, it's enough, but it's also wonderful. If you think, it's a great process. I was thinking about this all week long, and it's kind of fun to then come in here and see all of this stuff. But even if we hadn't, it's still a great process to be able to do this. So on Sunday, we'll start the new practice, which is the final one, which was restore.
And that's a lie. It's actually 2 Sundays from now.
That's 2 Sundays from
I
now.
lied. Sorry.
2 Sundays from now. And then we will have our next gathering on Wednesday, October 22nd at 6 on Zoom.
Mm-hmm.
So there'll be more announcements about that. But that is the next gathering on a Wednesday. And if you, we strongly encourage you to register for the retreat, which is on October 25th, which is a Saturday from 10 till 3. And I believe the online registration is open, correct? Yes, all right. And that is it. Thank you all so much for coming. Appreciate it. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Dale, for leading us.